The fluorescent lights hummed softly through the 32nd floor of Sterling Enterprises as Marcus Chun made his midnight security rounds. His footsteps echoed against the marble floors, a familiar rhythm that had become his life for the past 2 years. The corporate towers of downtown stretched endlessly through floor-to-ceiling windows, their lights twinkling like fallen stars. As he approached the executive suite, an unexpected sound pierced the silence. A baby's cry, sharp and desperate, echoed from behind the mahogany doors of the CEO's office. Marcus paused, his hand instinctively moving toward his radio, then hesitated. The crying grew more intense, filled with the kind of distress that made his chest tighten with recognition. Without thinking, his feet carried him forward. The office door stood slightly ajar, revealing glimpses of expensive furniture and the soft glow of a desk lamp. Inside, a tiny figure in pink pajamas lay in a portable crib, her small fists waving frantically as tears streamed down her red cheeks. Marcus glanced around the empty office, then at the baby whose cries were growing weaker with exhaustion. Before we dive into this story, drop a comment and let us know what state you're watching from. Maybe single parents helping each other is common where you're from. Something deep within him stirred, an old instinct he thought he had buried forever. He stepped closer to the crib, his trained eyes immediately assessing the infant's condition. Her breathing was rapid but clear, no signs of fever or distress beyond emotional upset. She was simply alone and frightened. Marcus reached into the crib with gentle hands, lifting the small bundle against his chest. The baby's cries immediately softened as he began a subtle swaying motion, his voice dropping to a low, soothing murmur. "Shoo, little one, you're safe now," he whispered, his fingers naturally finding the perfect position to support her tiny head. The infant's breathing gradually slowed as Marcus continued his gentle movements, years of buried instincts flooding back like muscle memory. He adjusted her position slightly, recognizing the signs of an uncomfortable sleep posture, and watched as her eyelids began to flutter with approaching calm. The sound of hurried heels on marble announced Victoria Sterling's return before she appeared in the doorway. The CEO froze at the threshold, her briefcase sliding from her shoulder as she took in the sight of a uniformed security guard holding her 6-month-old daughter. "What are you doing?" she demanded, her voice sharp with protective alarm, even as she noticed Emma's peaceful state. Marcus turned slowly, his movements deliberate and non-threatening, the baby still nestled securely in his arms. She was crying, he said simply, his dark eyes meeting Victoria's without apology or explanation. "I heard her from the hallway. She needed comfort." Victoria stepped forward, her maternal instincts warring with suspicion as she extended her arms. "Give her to me," she said, though something in the man's gentle demeanor gave her pause. Marcus transferred the now sleeping infant with practiced ease, his hands ensuring Emma remained undisturbed during the transition. "How did you know exactly what to do?" Victoria asked, studying his face as Emma settled contentedly against her shoulder. Marcus's expression grew distant as he watched Victoria cradle her daughter. "I have experience with children," he said quietly, the words carrying weight he didn't elaborate. His hand unconsciously moved to touch a small photo tucked inside his uniform pocket, a picture of his own 80-year-old daughter Lily. 3 years ago, Marcus had walked the pristine halls of Children's Memorial Hospital as head pediatric nurse, his scrubs bearing the name tag that patients' families came to trust. His gentle hands had comforted hundreds of frightened children, his expertise saving lives and calming fears. The memory felt like another lifetime now. The accusation had come swiftly and without warning. A wealthy family, devastated by their child's unexpected complications during a routine procedure, needed someone to blame. Marcus's shift supervisor, eager to protect the hospital's reputation, had chosen the easiest target. Despite his spotless record and unanimous support from colleagues, the investigation destroyed everything he had built. His nursing license suspended pending review, Marcus watched his world crumble. The legal fees drained their savings while his wife Sarah battled her own illness, the stress accelerating her decline. Within 6 months, he lost both his career and the woman who had believed in him unconditionally. Now he walked different halls, carrying keys instead of medical charts, his expertise reduced to watching empty offices through the night. But moments like these, when instinct took over and muscle memory guided his hands, reminded him of who he used to be. Victoria studied his face, noting the pain that flickered behind his composed expression. "There's more to your story, isn't there?" she said softly. Victoria's question hung in the air between them, but Marcus simply nodded toward the baby in her arms. "She'll sleep better now," he said, stepping back toward the door. "I should continue my rounds." As he moved to leave, Victoria found herself speaking again. "Wait," she called softly, not wanting to wake Emma. This wasn't the first time she had worked late into the night, juggling board meetings and conference calls while her daughter waited in the portable crib. The demands of running a billion-dollar enterprise rarely accommodated the needs of a six-man-hold. "How often do you patrol this floor?" she asked, surprising herself with the question. Marcus paused in the doorway, his silhouette framed by the hallway lights. "Every hour," he replied. "It's part of my route." Victoria looked down at Emma's peaceful face, remembering the panic she felt when she heard the crying from the conference room. The board meeting had run 3 hours longer than expected, and she had been torn between her responsibilities as CEO and her instincts as a mother. Finding the stranger soothing her daughter with such natural expertise stirred something unexpected within her. Over the following weeks, Victoria began to notice Marcus during her late nights at the office. He would appear silently in her peripheral vision, checking security monitors or adjusting temperature controls, but always with an awareness of Emma's presence. When the baby fussed, he would pause his duties, offering quiet suggestions about feeding times or sleep positions that somehow always proved correct. Despite her initial wariness, Victoria found herself looking forward to these brief encounters. The morning sun filtered through the small windows of Marcus and Lily's modest apartment as 80-year-old Lily Chun sat at their kitchen table, carefully arranging her homework papers. Her dark hair fell in gentle waves around her shoulders, and her serious expression mirrored her father's thoughtful nature. "Daddy, why do you work when everyone else is sleeping?" she asked, looking up from her math worksheet. Marcus smiled as he prepared her breakfast, his movements efficient despite the exhaustion that shadowed his eyes. "Someone needs to keep the building safe while people dream," he explained, setting a plate of scrambled eggs before her. "It's important work, sweetheart." Lily studied her father's face with the perceptive wisdom that children sometimes possess. "But you used to help sick kids get better," she said quietly. "I remember Mommy telling me stories about how you save babies." Marcus paused in his morning routine, the weight of lost dreams settling heavily on his shoulders. "Sometimes life takes us down different paths than we planned," he said, smoothing her hair with gentle fingers. "What matters is that we take care of each other." The little girl nodded solemnly, then brightened with sudden inspiration. "Maybe someday you'll help babies again," she said with the unwavering faith that only a child could possess. "Maybe God is just waiting for the right time." Marcus knelt beside her chair, pulling her into a warm embrace. "You're very wise, little one," he whispered against her hair. His daughter's belief in him remained unshaken despite their circumstances, a precious gift that sustained him through the darkest moments. Richard's face flushed red as he scrolled through his contacts, each call ending in disappointment. Professional translation services were booked solid, and the few available interpreters quoted prices that would have funded small countries. "This is a disaster," he muttered, running his fingers through his perfectly styled hair. "The Nakamura deal represents $60 million in revenue. Without proper translation, we'll look like amateurs trying to conduct international business." Marcus navigated through the morning traffic while Richard continued his increasingly desperate phone calls. The CEO's voice grew sharper with each rejection, his usual composure cracking under pressure. "What about that university program you mentioned last week?" Victoria suggested, trying to remain calm despite the mounting crisis. Richard attempted to pronounce the name of the Japanese university partnership, his American tongue stumbling over the unfamiliar syllables. The mispronunciation was so severe that it transformed a respectful greeting into an accidentally crude expression. Emma turned slightly in her seat, her young face showing gentle concern. "Excuse me, Mr. Sterling, she said politely, but I think you mean Wazita Daigaku. Not what you just said. Her pronunciation was flawless, each syllable crisp and authentic. Richard stopped mid-sentence, staring at the child with a mixture of surprise and dismissal. That's nice, sweetheart, but the adults are trying to solve a very important problem right now. The ambulance arrived within minutes, but Marcus had already begun the critical interventions that would save Emma's life. Using techniques he hadn't practiced in years, he had carefully monitored her breathing while applying cooling measures to bring down her dangerous fever. Dr. Jennifer Walsh, the emergency pediatrician, found Marcus cradling the now-stabilized infant when she arrived at the hospital. The security guard's calm demeanor and precise medical terminology immediately caught her attention as he provided a detailed report of Emma's condition and the interventions he had performed. You administered exactly the right treatment, Dr. Walsh told him, her professional respect evident in her voice. That fever could have caused seizures, or worse, if you hadn't acted so quickly. Where did you learn pediatric emergency protocols? Marcus's jaw tightened slightly as he transferred Emma to the medical team. I used to work in pediatrics, he said simply, avoiding further explanation. Victoria stood nearby, her usual composure shattered by the night's events and the realization of how close she had come to losing her daughter. The doctor's examination confirmed what Marcus had already assessed. Emma was suffering from a severe ear infection that had spiked her temperature to dangerous levels. Without his immediate intervention, the situation could have become life-threatening. As they waited in the hospital corridor, Victoria found herself studying Marcus with new eyes. The way he had moved with such confidence and precision, the medical knowledge he displayed, the gentle competence that had saved her daughter's life. This was no ordinary security guard. You saved her, Victoria whispered, her voice breaking slightly. You saved my baby. Victoria Sterling had built her empire on thorough research and understanding her investments. The morning after Emma's hospital stay, she found herself applying those same skills to learning about the man who had saved her daughter's life. Her private investigator's report arrived within 48 hours, revealing a story that made Victoria's chest tighten with anger and disbelief. Marcus Chun, former head pediatric nurse at Children's Memorial Hospital, had been one of the most respected caregivers in the city until a wealthy family's false accusation destroyed his career. The file contained testimonials from dozens of colleagues, parents whose children Marcus had helped heal, and medical supervisors who praised his exceptional skills. There were commendations for life-saving interventions, patient care awards, and continuing education certificates that showed his dedication to excellence. Most heartbreaking was the final entry, documenting how the stress of the false accusation had affected his wife's battle with cancer. Sarah Chun had died just months after Marcus lost his nursing license, leaving him alone to raise their daughter while fighting legal battles that drained their savings. Victoria closed the file and stared out her office window, thinking about the gentleman who worked her building's night shift. He had been relegated to checking locks and monitoring security cameras when he should have been saving lives in a pediatric ward. The injustice of it made her hands clench into fists. That evening, as Marcus began his security rounds, Victoria was waiting in her office. Emma slept peacefully in her crib, healthy and content thanks to his intervention. We need to talk, Victoria said quietly when he appeared in her doorway. Marcus stepped into Victoria's office with the wariness of someone who had learned that unexpected conversations rarely brought good news. She gestured to the chair across from her desk, her expression serious but not unkind. I know about your background, she said without preamble, sliding the investigator's file across the polished surface. I know about Children's Memorial Hospital, the false accusation, and what you lost. Marcus's face remained impassive as he glanced at the thick folder, though Victoria caught the slight tightening around his eyes. That part of my life is over, he said quietly. I'm just a security guard now. No, Victoria replied firmly. You're a gifted pediatric nurse who saved my daughter's life. You're a man who was treated unjustly by people who should have protected you. And you're wasting your talents walking these halls at night. She leaned forward, her business instincts taking over. I want to offer you a position as head of my personal child care division. I'm expanding Sterling Enterprises to include employee family services, and I need someone with your expertise to run it." Marcus shook his head slowly. "Ms. Sterling, I appreciate what you're trying to do, but I can't. The licensing board, the investigation, my reputation in the medical field is destroyed." Victoria smiled, the first genuine warmth she had shown since their conversation began. "What if I told you that reputation was about to be restored? What if I told you I've already spoken with the hospital administrator and the licensing board? What if I told you that your accusers have been exposed for filing similar false claims against 3 other medical professionals?" Marcus felt the world shift beneath him as hope, long buried, began to stir. The sedan crawled to a complete stop as construction barriers funneled 3 lanes of traffic into a single narrow passage. Orange cones stretched ahead like a parade of obstacles, and the digital clock on the dashboard seemed to mock their dwindling time. Richard's knuckles whitened as he gripped his phone, watching precious minutes evaporate. The Nakamura executives expected punctuality as a sign of respect, and tardiness could destroy negotiations before they even began. Marcus studied the gridlock ahead, then glanced at his GPS display showing alternative routes. "Mr. Sterling," he said quietly, "I know a back way through the warehouse district. It adds 5 miles but saves 20 minutes in this traffic." Victoria looked up from her own phone calls, impressed by the driver's knowledge of the city's hidden arteries. Richard waved dismissively without looking up from his screen, too focused on his crisis to acknowledge the suggestion. Emma had been listening to her father's quiet conversation in what sounded like multiple languages. She switched effortlessly between English responses to Marcus and what Victoria increasingly recognized as fluent Japanese phrases. The child's accent was remarkable, carrying the proper regional inflections that took years to master. "Mr. Sterling," Victoria said carefully, "perhaps we should listen to your driver's route suggestion. He seems to know these streets quite well." Richard finally looked up, his stress-clouded judgment beginning to clear as he noticed Victoria's serious expression. The meeting took place in Victoria's conference room the following Monday morning. Marcus arrived wearing his best suit, borrowed from his former life, while his heart hammered against his ribs. Across the polished table sat Dr. Sarah Martinez, the current administrator of Children's Memorial Hospital, alongside Victoria and her legal team. Dr. Martinez opened a thick folder and looked directly at Marcus, with profound regret etched in her features. "Mr. Chun, I owe you a formal apology on behalf of the hospital and the entire medical community," she began. "The investigation into your case has been reopened and concluded. The family who accused you has been exposed for filing identical false claims against 3 other healthcare professionals in different states." Marcus felt the air leave his lungs as she continued. "Your nursing license has been fully reinstated with a formal letter of commendation for your exemplary service record. We would like to offer you the position of Director of Pediatric Emergency Services, with a substantial salary increase and full benefits." The vindication Marcus had dreamed of for 3 years was finally his, but he found himself looking at Victoria, who held Emma peacefully in her arms. The baby who had changed everything smiled up at him with innocent trust. "Dr. Martinez, I'm honored by your offer," Marcus said carefully, his voice growing stronger with each word. "But I've already accepted a position that will allow me to help children and families in a different way. I'll be establishing Sterling Enterprises' new family care division." Victoria smiled as Emma reached tiny fingers toward Marcus, recognizing the man who had saved her life and was now choosing to build something new rather than simply return to what was lost. 6 months later, the Sterling Enterprises Family Care Center hummed with the gentle activity of children and parents. Marcus stood in the bright, cheerfully decorated space he had designed, watching as employees brought their children for expert care while they worked. His pediatric nursing skills had found new purpose in preventive care, early childhood development, and family support services. Emma Sterling, now a thriving 1-year-old, toddled across the play area toward Marcus with determined steps. He scooped her up with practiced ease, marveling at how this tiny person had been the catalyst for reclaiming his life's work. Her delighted giggles filled the room as he spun her gently in his arms. Lily Chun sat nearby, helping younger children with puzzles and stories during her after-school hours at the center. She had become the unofficial assistant to her father, her natural empathy and wisdom making her beloved by the families they served. The little girl who had never stopped believing in her father's gifts now watched him flourish in ways that exceeded even her hopeful imagination. Victoria appeared in the doorway, observing the scene with deep satisfaction. Her decision to create this innovative program had revolutionized employee satisfaction and family support within her company. More importantly, it had restored a gifted man to his true calling while providing her daughter with the caring expertise she needed. The friendship that had grown between Victoria and Marcus represented something rare in their respective worlds. Genuine respect built on shared values and mutual support. If this story touched your heart, please drop a comment and let us know your favorite part, or if you've ever witnessed someone's hidden talents being recognized.